President Bola Ahmed Tinubu signs the 2023 supplementary budget. Minister of Power orders investigation into a 5-year extension of a license for discus. Plus, oil takes higher as markets stretch off China inflation data. The program is Business Express, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Benny Adams, your guide. Time we talk business by bringing you updates of happenings around the world. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has signed the 2023 supplementary budget of more than 1.3 trillion naira into law. The signing at the State House was witnessed by principal officers of the National Assembly, led by Senate President Godswill Akpabio, Speaker Tajuddin Abbas, and the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, George Akume, among others. A supplementary appropriation bill was last week submitted to the National Assembly, and the legislature approved the sum of 2.17 trillion naira. The supplementary budget is to, among other things, take care of military expenditure, make up for the conditional cash transfer, and 6-month wage award the federal government promised its workers. The Minister of Power, Adelabu, has ordered an investigation into the 5-year extension of a license for electricity distribution companies after the elapse of their initial 10-year license from 2013 to 2023. The minister explained that while the federal government may find it difficult to review the contracts with electricity distribution companies, it's working on creating mini discos for states across the country for proper coverage of consumer needs. He urged state governments to actively engage and cooperate with the distribution companies within their respective states by assuming a more proactive role and investing in the power sector through the discourse. Meanwhile, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has intervened to halt an electricity tariff increase and insisted on nationwide power consumption subsidies. This was revealed by the Minister of Power, Adelabu. Adelabu announced the government's intent to scrutinize the 5-year license extension granted to privatized power distribution and generation companies, which would have expired on October 31st, 2023. Speaking at the press conference held in Abuja on Wednesday, the minister used the opportunity to read out the Riot Act, promising to dismiss any underperforming chief executive within the ministry. He also highlighted that absence of implementation had triggered a liquidity crisis in the sector. However, he emphasized that the president had rejected any increase in electricity tariffs. Now, cooking gas as an eco-friendly, safe and efficient fuel used in cooking is coming under threat with the rising price of this important commodity in homes. Dauda Mohammed reports on the availability and prices in Kaduna State.
Recently, more people, especially in urban settlements like Kaduna, have been embracing the use of gas for domestic uses, mainly due to its efficiency. However, the rising price of this important commodity has given consumers reason for a rethink.
I want them to look on the issue let them face on the issue, how people are suffering. This is cost, and we are not happy with the price of the gas that you see the gas now.
We went around several gas dispensing outlets around Kaduna, and what we observed is that there is no scarcity of the product as per se, but there are scarcity of customers due to the price increase. For example, this gas dispensing outlet here used to be a beehive of activities, but due to the price increase, there are less and less customers coming to obtain the product. On what might be the reason for this recent price hike, retailers say attitude of depot owners and volatility in the international market might be some of the reasons.
Actually, we're having a difficulty in transport, especially now we're having a high cost of diesel transportation. So, and when you add the cost of the transportation of diesel, it affects to the end user.
Whenever they import a new product and there is a rise of dollar in the market, in the parallel market, that's what they see. They have to adjust their price too, and as a retailer too, we have to adjust.
Head of Department, Petroleum and Gas Processing, Kaduna Polytechnic, Mukhtar Habib, believes with the abundance of gas deposits across the country, with the right framework in place, cooking gas prices can be controlled.
So those people that have, that are at the disadvantaged, side, should now think in their own way and come up with solutions, thought out solutions. This, once you look at the value chain, you can cut out something and you'll see price going down.
For restaurant owners and others that use gas like this for their daily cooking, the rising price of the commodity has seriously affected their bottom line. In Kaduna, Dauda Mohammed.
And the Nigerian National Petroleum Company, NNPC Limited, announces the introduction of Nembe crude oil grade into the international crude oil market. The announcement of the Nembe crude oil blend was made at the ongoing August European Crude Conference in London. A statement by Olufemi Shoneye, Chief Corporate Communications Officer, NNPC Limited, reveals that the unique selling point of the Nembe crude oil grade with an API gravity was highlighted at the August conference in London. The Nembe crude oil grade also has a low sulfur content and a low carbon footprint due to flare gas elimination, fitting perfectly into the required specifications of major buyers in Europe. 2 cargoes of 950,000 barrels, each of the Nembe crude oil grade, have since been exported to France and the Netherlands with its attractive assay of API 29 and low sulfur content. The Nembe crude oil grade commands a premium to the global Brent benchmark. Nigeria now boasts of an additional crude oil export of 2 cargoes at 950,000 barrels each per month and 1.21 billion cubic feet of export gas monthly. The Nembe crude oil export terminal has a loading capacity of 25,000 barrels per hour and will be exporting over 3.6 million barrels of crude oil monthly at full scale of operation. Now to the subject matter of the day. In 2022, the Nigerian Energy Transition Plan was launched to chart a pathway for Nigeria's ambitious plan of achieving net zero by 2060. This plan focused on reducing emissions across 5 prominent areas: power, cooking, oil and gas, transport, and industry. These areas are responsible for about 65% of the country's 275 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent total greenhouse gas emissions, and the power sector has the highest proportion of these emissions. The Energy Transition Plan is commendable with its strategy to move away from fossil fuel sources such as oil, coal and gas. And on the subject matter, we're looking at the energy transition and the cost of powering the economy. And we have an energy expert in the studio, Olabode Sonwumi. You're welcome to Business Express.
Thank you. Good morning, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. While we look to transiting from fossil fuels to cleaner energies, the availability of even the fossil fuel is a challenge. You saw from the last 2 reports talking about the cost of, let's start with the cost of the PMS, now talking about cooking gas. Yes, we're having CNG powered vehicles to reduce transportation. Can you give us your view on how energy sufficiency and insufficiency is at the moment in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you very much. So when we talk energy transition, that's a global phenomenon originating within the energy industry but affecting everybody. So basically what it means is that the way the world uses energy at the moment, if we continue at that rate, we will destroy the earth as we know it. So we need to alter our use of energy. And specifically, what destroys the earth are carbon-related gases, carbon monoxide, methane, and all that. And so the measurement of how we reduce our consumption is measured by how much reduction we have in carbon emissions. So that's why we hear the word carbon emissions all the time. Now, the other side of it is that it will have been simple to say that we stop using fossil fuels immediately and stop all carbon emissions. But if we were to do that, civilization as we know it will come to an end, and so many things will halt. So what the world has said is that rather than stop the use of carbon, fossil fuels, whatever breaks out carbon, let us gradually migrate by reducing our carbon emissions so that we get to the stage where we don't emit carbons at all. And that's the whole idea of the of energy transition. So we are transiting from carbon-related energy sources to those that don't emit carbon. However, just like the world too has noted, there is a need to still do certain things. So for example, like Nigeria, unlike the developed countries, development, industrialization as we know it, was built on the back of carbon emissions. And so we cannot just completely alter our own carbon emissions. So Nigeria has come up with its own strategy, and they have identified gas as their primary fuel for energy transition. Now, gas, even though, so that's natural gas in this case, even though it's still a fossil fuel, it has significantly lower carbon emissions than the other options. So basically, in evolving the operations of that is getting the supply chain all right, as well as maintaining what is affordable to Nigerians, is the crossroad that Nigerians are and the people in government are at the moment. The other side of it, obviously, that was mentioned in the report, is the fluctuations in the price of the naira against the dollar, which is basically an economic issue. It's not really an energy issue, and which has so many factors to it, from our production rate to our consumption patterns, and all that. But having said that, what the government have to grapple with, a lot of it are by factors outside their own control. So it's like a sailor that is trying to navigate his ship against the wind. So it's some expertise to use the wind to your strength, but the wind and the external forces are completely outside your control. So yes, there is still the responsibility of government to ensure that all these things fall within affordability rates, but those are the factors. Some of it are global, some of it are economic related, some of it also have to do with our own consumption patterns, and of course some of it is government related because it has to do with planning, it has to do with availability of the product, it has to do with the supply chain being functional, and it has to do with people being productive and earning a proper income. So in a summary, that's it.
Transition fuel, and we know Nigeria is a gas destination, almost a number 4, number 5 in the world. How sufficient do we have this commodity in country, and how much of it are we exporting out to kind of bring in liquidity, talking about foreign exchange for the country, which is most needed at this particular point in time?
Okay, so when we started with gas in the early 2000s, that was the Obasanjo government, we actually were at the same level with Qatar. So when we did NLNG train 1, train 2, I think up to train 4, train 3, we were at the same level with Qatar. And the project in Escravos, EGTL, that's the Escravos gas to liquid project, was also done at the same time with the Qatari project. It had the same capacity, it had the same production rate. However, as is a bane in Nigeria, a new government comes and they believe that they don't want to continue with what the old government is doing. So the Yaradua government discontinued a number of things, which was not necessarily picked up by the Jonathan government, and so we lost our momentum. However, gas as at that time was done for the purpose of export. It wasn't even, there was no demand and there was no inkling for domestic consumption. But once we got to a certain stage in global output, it came to the situation where people felt, I mean, when there were fluctuating prices and the prices went so low, they felt that we can't just be exporting, that we need to develop our own capacity. And that was when we came up with the Gas Master Plan. The Gas Master Plan focused on development of gas for local consumption on 4 main areas. The first one is gas to power. The second one is gas-based industries. Those are industries that use gas as raw materials. You're talking about fertilizer, you're talking about methanol, steel, and the related. You're talking about industries that use gas as a fuel, and of course, LPG, which is your cooking gas. Those were the 4 target areas, and they started to build infrastructure around that areas. However, the government came up with 2 policies in that gas master plan, one of which was that for everybody that produces gas, whether export or not, they needed to make a percentage available for local consumption. That's the domestic supply obligation, DSO. And of course, that also impacted NLNG. So most of the gas that we produce, that we use, is from NLNG, that is local. But however, it does not meet our need. So yes, we do have gas in reserves at the bottom, under the ground, but the gas that we have cannot be used as it is. It needs to be processed. So it is like water. You can have a lot of rivers around you, but having rivers around you does not translate to drinking water. And that's why you have those people say those things, water everywhere, but none available to drink. So what we are lacking as a nation, and what's reducing our ability to maximize the gas reserves that we have, just basically has to do with the fact that we have gas but has not been processed for consumption in the way that we can use it.
Okay, while we look forward to that time, we'll get it processed for in-house usage and to boost much of exports. Let's talk about meeting the net zero targets. For Nigeria, initially it was a 2050 target for zero emission, and now we're talking about 2060, and a whole lot is needed to kind of finance that process, which is getting to the tune of like $1.9 trillion and approximately 10 billion annually. Well, it is a fact that the government and even private sector support, need to do a whole lot to get to have such finances. In country, at this moment, it's not possible. That aside, British Petroleum has just issued out about 27 mining licenses for oil and gas within the United Kingdom, as well as around Canada, and just recently to Israel. Amid this war, is issuing out licenses to boost oil and gas production. Where are we going on net zero if we still have these advanced countries going to drill oil at this time?
Okay, so this geopolitics of oil and gas, every industry has its politics. Every organization has its politics. So it's just, we don't want to be like the 13-year-old that suddenly discovered that sometimes his parents also lie. Yes, the global powers are known for all. They have the image for fairness and all that, but they can also be unfair. They can also have their imperfections. Let me not say they can be unfair. Let me say they can have their own imperfections. So when you look at the science of sustainability and the science that back it up, it speaks to the fact that energy needs to be available at a certain amount that is affordable for it to be sustainable. Because if you produce these significant energy sources, whether it be solar, whether it be hydrogen and all that, and you can really not be able to sustain it or provide it at a cost that people can afford, what you have is an exotic, sexy energy source which nobody can use. So what has happened is that Europe is in energy crisis. I mean, I was in one of the big German towns earlier in the year, and no exaggeration about this, there was a protest that was 1.3 kilometers long of people. And they were protesting. It was not covered in the news. No international media covered it. But I did a recording on my phone because I was surprised. Yeah, but they were also protesting high energy prices. They were also, because I asked the people to, I walked to the city center and I saw the long protest. They were protesting high energy prices, and this was in May, where they had even they had just gone over the winter at that time. And so the energy prices, even though it's high, it's affecting a significant part of the economy. And then the current governments across Europe at this time, if they do not do something about it, they will lose elections. So it is the reality on ground that is making people to do practical things that will help them to sustain themselves. So basically, this is the Western nations doing what is practical and in their own interest.
Thank you very much.
And the whole world be damned.
Olabode Sawami, as they do practical things back in Nigeria, we hope policymakers also get into practical things that will ensure not just energy sufficiency, but sustainability over time. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us at this particular point in time.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine.
Gold hovers near 3-week low as traders await Powell's remarks. Let's see how other commodities are trading in the international market. Now, oil prices edge up on Thursday as markets stretch off deflationary indicators in China and looked for further clues on the status of demand from the world's two biggest oil consumers. Brent crude futures rose 62 cents to $80.16 a barrel. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude up 61 cents at $75.94 a barrel. Now, European markets are set to open lower again as a negative momentum continues. Let's join Bosede Abel. Oh, it is Neka. Neka, give us an update on the markets around the world this morning.
Hello and welcome to the Global Markets segment. Most Asia-Pacific markets edged higher Thursday after indices in the region fell for 2 straight days. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index fell 0.12%. The Shanghai Composite also rose 0.07%, while the Hang Seng Index is down 0.12%. In the U.S., S&P 500 futures slid modestly in early morning trade following a session in which the broad market index added to its longest winning streak since November 2021. Futures tied to the S&P 500 and Nasdaq 100 each dropped 0.05%, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 0.01%. Now, European markets are expected to open in negative territory Thursday. Germany's DAX is expected to open 19 points lower at 15,205, UK's FTSE 23 points, and the French CAC 14 points. Now, African markets are also heading for a negative open this Thursday as momentum continues to decline at the moment. The JSE Africa Top 40 in South Africa is down 0.83%, and Namibia's overall index is also lower by 0.19%. And that's Global Market Review for this Thursday morning. It's back to Benny.
Thank you, Neka, for that update. And this is where we end this edition of Business Express. We value your feedback, so keep the comments, observations, and suggestions coming. Be informed that all previous episodes are available on YouTube on the NTA's channel. Business Express returns Friday at 3 p.m. Keep a date with us.